Hi everyone, my name is Skyler Evans, and in today's video I'll summarize Chapter 13, Saving Biodiversity and Protecting Ecosystem Services from The Age of Sustainable Development by Jeffrey Sach. We'll discuss the importance of biodiversity and efforts for its preservation. The following questions will guide our discussion. What is the relationship between biodiversity and ecosystem services? How does human action harm biodiversity, and how do we measure this impact? What are the impacts of overfishing and deforestation on biodiversity and productivity? And what international policies can be created to combat biodiversity loss? Humans have always had a fondness and reliance on nature, both for survival and the maintenance of culture. Edward O. Wilson, a biologist at Harvard University, describes this biophilia as the urge to affiliate with other forms of life. In order to understand how humans rely on nature, biologists study ecosystems, their biodiversity, and the ecosystem services they provide. Ecosystems, all the living and non-living elements in a local environment, are a way to organize the natural world to understand the complex interactions between species. Ecosystems include all plant, animal, and microbial species, as well as non-living features such as water sources and geological formations. Ecosystems regulate water, nutrient, and climate cycles. A fundamental concept for studying ecosystems is biological diversity or biodiversity. Biodiversity describes the variability of life at all levels of ecological organization, from within a species to an ecosystem to the global scale. The level of biodiversity within a level of ecological organization determines the health, productivity, and ability to respond to environmental shocks of that system. A change in biodiversity in one ecosystem can affect them all. Imagine all the ecosystems in the world as an interconnected web, and when one is harmed by human action, they are all at risk. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment studied global human interaction with ecosystems to determine the 4 key ecosystem services humans rely on. Provisioning services are the way that ecosystems directly provide for humans through food, water, and materials for shelter and clothing. Regulating services describe the cycles of climate, water, nutrients, and diseases that ecosystems regulate, which in turn benefit humans. Supporting ecosystem services include the nutrient cycle and soil used for agriculture. And lastly, cultural ecosystem services are how humans use the environment for aesthetic, religious, and cultural purposes. Biodiversity is key to maintaining the health of ecosystems, and therefore the ecosystem services that we rely on. This graphic summarizes the importance of biodiversity for human well-being. However, we are taking more from ecosystems than they can provide. Humans are taking 40 to 50% of all of the world's photosynthesis, called the net primary production. Our depletion of ecosystems, in addition to other human actions, are harming biodiversity and causing the 6th mass extinction in the planet's history. One human action harming biodiversity is overfishing in marine ecosystems. Overfishing is when we take too many fish out of an ecosystem and the fish can no longer replenish their populations. First, predators, such as salmon, are removed from the ecosystem, and then fishers begin depleting species down the food chain, which is also called down the trophic levels. Trophic levels describe how far removed a species is from photosynthesis, where autotrophs produce their own food, and animals that eat autotrophs have higher trophic levels. Predators that eat carnivores are at very high trophic levels. As we fish down the trophic levels, we decrease marine biodiversity. Another action severely harming biodiversity is deforestation, especially in the tropics. Deforestation removes habitats from the most biologically diverse areas of the world. Furthermore, deforestation causes worldwide climate change by increasing the reflectivity of the Earth and in turn the amount of heat from the sun that the Earth absorbs. This map shows the past and current global deforestation. How do we measure the human ecological footprint, or how much of the global ecosystems that we are appropriating? Scientists at the Earth Observatory at Columbia University created this map to show the human impact on the world. They based this impact on land use change, population density, infrastructure, and more. In addition, the International Union for Conservation of Nature has created a red list that includes all species threatened of extinction by human action. The number of species on the red list increases each year. So, how can we change human action and pump the brakes on biodiversity loss? Because biodiversity loss is affected by so many human actions, the solutions must also come from many angles. There have been a few attempts at international policy to decrease biodiversity loss in the past. In fisheries, the maximum sustainable yield describes how many fish can be removed from an ecosystem without harming that ecosystem. Fisheries have begun placing MSY limits on fishers to ensure that future success and health of the fisheries. UN REDD+ is a United Nations effort funding countries to combat deforestation and increase reforestation efforts. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES, is an effort to limit the sale of endangered species. CITES has had some success, but profits from endangered animal sales are still substantial. Lastly, the Convention on Biological Diversity has attempted to preserve and protect global biodiversity. This report card published in Nature magazine in 2012 shows the general failure of the CBD to inflict lasting change. Jeffrey Sach reminds us, the most important point to emphasize time and again is that the pressures of the global economy are so strong that even when treaties or regulations are put in place, vested interests often give a powerful counterforce to these measures, and control mechanisms are often at the mercy of illegal activities, bribery, corruption, and other limits of enforcement. The weight, force, and momentum of the world economy are often so powerful that the world economy runs roughshod over attempts at regulation. We must find economic incentives for countries to fight against biodiversity loss. Here is a review of the key terms and concepts we've covered in this video. Thanks for watching and learning more from the Age of Sustainable Development.